Welcome. This is Pivot Point Strategy for Change. I'm Nik Michael. There's something I've been sitting with for a while now, and I want to bring it into the room with you today, or whatever room you're in. Maybe it's your car, your kitchen, your morning walk. Wherever you are, I want you to stay with me on this, because what I'm going to talk about today is something I've watched unfold in therapy rooms for over 2 decades, and something I've wrestled with in my own life. It's the phenomenon of doing the same thing again and again. Not because you're unaware, not because you're broken, but because something beneath the surface is still running the show, a quiet, unseen program that keeps looping. Let me give you some real pictures of what this looks like, not clinical abstractions, real life. Think about a woman who finally ends a relationship with someone who was emotionally unavailable, distant, withholding, always just out of reach. She did the work, she went to therapy, she read the books, she promised herself never again. And then, about a year later, she's sitting across from someone new at dinner, and there's this pull, this electric chemistry she hasn't felt in a long time. What she doesn't realize yet is that the chemistry she's feeling is actually familiarity in disguise. He's warm but inconsistent, present but guarded, and 6 months in, she's doing it again, working twice as hard for half the love. The geography changed, the person changed, the feeling did not change. Or think about the man who grew up in a home where nothing was ever enough. Grades were acknowledged, but never celebrated. Achievements were noted and then immediately redirected. Good. Now what's next? He's 43 now. He runs a successful business, has a family that loves him, colleagues who respect him, and yet he cannot rest. There is always another goal, another metric, another level. He tells himself it's ambition. It is, but it's also something older. He's trying to earn something that shouldn't have been given to him freely a long time ago. He keeps running, not toward the future, but away from the feeling that he's never quite enough. Or think about the person who keeps choosing friendships or even jobs where they end up being the caretaker, the one who holds everyone else together, the shoulder, the listener, the fixer. They leave one exhausting dynamic, swear off being everything to everyone, and then somehow, almost without noticing, they've rebuilt the exact same structure with a different cast of characters. Their worth has become so tied to being needed that genuine reciprocity, someone actually caring for them, feels uncomfortable. So they unconsciously drift toward people who take because taking feels like the language of love they learned earliest. And then there's the subtler version, the person who doesn't repeat relationships so much as they repeat emotional positions. Always the one who gets overlooked in meetings. Always the one who gets passed over. Always the one who says nothing when they should speak up. They move companies, they change industries, and still the pattern follows. Not because they're a magnet for bad luck, but because there's an old belief operating underneath one that says your voice is not welcome. And then there's the subtler version, the person who doesn't repeat relationships so much as they repeat emotional positions. Always the one who gets overlooked in meetings, always the one who gets passed over, always the one who says nothing when they should speak up. They move companies, they change industries, and still the pattern follows. Not because they're a magnet for bad luck, but because there's an old belief operating underneath one that says your voice is not welcome. And so they make themselves smaller over and over in rooms that might actually have space for them if they'd only take it. These aren't unusual stories, they're human stories, and they share something important in every single one. The person isn't failing, they're repeating, and there's a difference. So, what's actually happening here? Let's take a closer look. In therapy, it's called neurotic repetition. And before that word neurotic throws you, let me tell you how I mean it. Not as a criticism, not as a diagnosis, simply as a description. The unconscious is acting on your behalf, but without your awareness. Something unintegrated, unfinished, is steering behavior from the shadows. In Gestalt therapy, we say that when an experience is unfinished, a feeling that was never spoken, a need that was never met, it doesn't just fade with time, it freezes. It lingers. The way a song you can't name keeps playing at the edge of your mind. The psyche continues to circle back, creating new versions of the old scene, hoping this time the ending is different. This time you'll be chosen. This time you'll be enough. This time someone will stay. Freud named this same pull, repetition, compulsion, the gravitational force of the familiar, even when the familiar hurts. Our nervous systems are wired to crave what they recognize. And here's the thing that surprises people when I say it out loud. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar peace. I'll say it again. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar peace. Not because you want to suffer, but because your nervous system can't always tell the difference between what's known and what's safe. It confuses predictability with protection. That woman drawn to emotionally unavailable partners, she's not looking for pain. She's looking for the feeling of home. And home, as she learned it, felt like longing, like working for love, like the door that's never quite open. So when someone is genuinely available, genuinely warm, something in her actually gets uncomfortable because that doesn't match the internal map. And we always unconsciously try to navigate by the map we're given. Gestalt work also looks at the specific ways we interrupt authentic connection, how we block ourselves from completing an experience, from actually landing somewhere new. These interruptions have names, and I want to walk you through them because I think you'll recognize yourself in at least one. First being introjection. This is when you swallow someone else's belief whole without chewing on it, without deciding if it even fits. Your mother's voice that says, "Don't be too much." Your father's implicit rule that feelings are a sign of weakness. You didn't choose those rules, you inherited them, but you've been living by them ever since, as if they were your own. Next, projection. This is when you take a feeling you can't quite own and put it on someone else. You're furious, but owning that feels dangerous. So suddenly your partner is the one who seems angry. Projection keeps the feeling at arm's length. Outside is safer than inside, even when it distorts what's real. Next, retroflexion. It's one that I find myself returning to over and over again in the work I do with people. It's the move of turning energy back on yourself, energy that was meant to go outward. The anger you couldn't express as a child becomes self-criticism now. The grief you weren't allowed to feel becomes a tightness in your chest that never fully leaves. You do it to yourself. What you wish for, in essence, you do to yourself what you wish you could have said, or done, or asked for, out there in the world. Next is deflection. This is the art of staying just close enough to connection without actually landing in it. A well timed joke, a subject change, and "I'm fine" delivered with a full smile. Deflection keeps things light, light enough to be bearable, but nothing fully touches you. Nothing fully arrives. Next is confluence. This is when you merge so completely with another person and their needs that you lose track of your own. It doesn't look like conflict, it looks like harmony. But it's harmony of disappearing, of agreeing before you've even checked in with yourself. None of these are pathologies, they're strategies. They were good strategies once, developed at a time when you needed protection from something genuinely overwhelming. The problem isn't that they were wrong. The problem is that they outlasted the danger. And now they're still running, still intercepting contact with the present, still navigating a map of the past. So, what happens when the loop becomes visible? When you catch yourself mid script and recognize, "Oh, I've been here before." That moment is the beginning of everything. The first move is naming it. And I mean, naming it precisely. Naming the pattern isn't just useful, it's transformative. There's a difference between being inside the script and being the one reading it out loud. When you can say, "This is my retroflexion showing up," or even just, "This is feeling old, not new," you've already opened a crack of space that didn't exist before. A fraction of choice enters the system. The second move is curiosity without judgment. The question isn't, "What is wrong with me?" That question closes everything down. The question is, "What is unfinished here? What didn't get completed? What need is still circling, still looking for resolution? How do I complete the circle of unfinished business?" Gestalt is less about fixing and more about contact, making genuine, full contact with what's actually present so that something can finally move. The third move is finding the need beneath the behavior. The behavior is always the surface. Beneath it is always a need that makes complete sense. You overwork, not because you love exhaustion, but because you still need to feel indispensable. You chase the unavailable, not because you enjoy neglect, but because some part of you still believes that earning love is the only kind that counts. You stay silent in the meeting, not because you have nothing to say, but because a very old voice still says it isn't safe to be seen or to speak. When you make contact with that actual need, when you name it without shame, the behavior begins to lose its grip. The loop doesn't need to keep running. Something has finally been heard. And that brings us to what I think about every time I sit across from someone in a session or record one of these episodes of Pivot Point. Not a dramatic transformation, not a sudden awakening, a pause. One breath-wide pause at the moment the old pull arrives. You feel the gravity of the familiar pattern. You feel the tug toward the old script. And instead of following it automatically, you hesitate. The hesitation is microscopic, and it is radical. Before it, no choice. After it, possibility. Consider that. Before it, you thought there was no choice. But after it, there are possibilities. Maybe you stay in the discomfort of being cared for instead of deflecting with a joke. Maybe you say the thing in the meeting, the thing you always swallow. Maybe you let the anger move through your body instead of holding it back into self-criticism. Maybe you sit with the unfamiliar warmth of someone who simply loves you, and you let it in instead of looking for the catch. These aren't sweeping changes. They're tiny redirections, repeated over time. In Gestalt therapy, it's creative adjustment, discovering a new living way to meet an old need, not suppressing the need, not shaming the pattern, meeting it finally differently with your whole present self. Here's the thing I want to leave you with before I ask you my closing question. If you've been living inside a loop, if you've looked at the last few years and seen the same shape appearing in different clothes, please hear this. The loop is not proof of failure. It is proof of perseverance. The psyche only repeats because it still believes completion is possible. That's not weakness. That's faith. Stubborn, sometimes painful faith that healing can still happen. You are not broken. You are unfinished. And unfinished is something you can work with. You can complete the whole circle. Your job is not to shame the pattern out of existence. Your job is to bring it into the light, to see where it starts, understand what it's been trying to do for you, and then slowly choose another direction, even a small one, even once. That's the pivot, and it is always, always available to you, even now. So I leave you, as always, with this question. What is your pivot point? Think about it. What is your pivot point? If today's episode landed somewhere real for you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need it. And if you want to go deeper into these themes, come find me on Substack. The link is in the show notes. I write there the way I talk here, honestly, and with all the clinical weight I can bring to something that actually matters. See you in the next episode. This is Pivot Point Strategy for Change. I'm Nik Michael.